Oh, hey, what's happening there, YouTube? It's Brian House here for Housemade, and today we are going to take a little bit of a step back in time and talk about the $100 VFD that I purchased almost 2 years ago now. Made a video on that, put it all together, and wanted to share my journey of understanding variable frequency drives and how they power motors and how that relates to 2x72 belt grinders. Well, it's been 2 years now, and I've been running that same VFD. And because of the difference in cost, like the other video I made about the K-Back 27D, which I love and I think is a fantastic, it's my preferred VFD, if you will, versus this cheaper overseas version of these VFDs, which are about, I think you can get them for around $90 at the making of this video. So I wanted to give you an update about some of the things I would do differently, about how I handled the wiring. I caught some flack in some forums about my wiring techniques, and again, I was just learning back then, didn't fully understand how it all worked. So I want to update you on that, and then also update you on the quality and how pleased I am with it, and all of those things as well. And then we're going to actually take this thing and remove it from my workbench. It's been sitting under my bench now for the 2 years. I mounted it up underneath my grinder bench and just tried to keep it out of the dust, and then every couple weeks I just blew some air through it just to kind of keep the dust off the electronics, and that seems to have kind of, you know, kept it alive. I've heard a lot of people who set it right on their work surface, it gets covered in dust, and then eventually the metal dust settles into the electronics and then destroys the units. I didn't want that to happen, so I went ahead and mounted it underneath. But I know I'm on borrowed time with that technique, so I found a kind of a cool solution. Thanks to my friend Don Walker. He's a customer. He bought into the Revolution project a few months ago. He built the Revolution, sent me an email and said, hey, check this out. I found a really cool way to enclose that overseas VFD, that cheaper VFD. So anyway, Don, thank you so much for your contribution to the project, because I do know not everybody can afford the K-Back unit. It is really expensive. And if you have 220 in your workshop, this will be a really awesome alternative. So the long and short of it is the unit still runs. The machine runs fine. I use it every day. That grinder has been in service now for 2 years, every single day, and that VFD runs and powers it just fine. I'm just nervous that eventually it's just going to pop one day and then I'll have to replace it. I don't usually keep parts like that here in the shop, so it's important to me that I actually do everything I can to keep this thing running for, say, another 10 years, right? So anyway, let's hop into the actual, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the video, which is actually going to be taking the VFD apart, doing an autopsy, and then mounting it inside of this really cool enclosure. All right, so here's the actual unit. The control board is popped off. When you buy this thing on Amazon or wherever, they include this little clip enclosure thing so you can mount it outside of the actual case. Yeah, and that's pretty handy actually. It's been just sitting on my desk like this, and you can see I've, you know, not really taking great care of it, but it is still working. They do give you a 6-foot long extension wire. I don't know what these are called, but that is included. And you know, and then if you don't want to use that, you can actually just plug this right into this, and then it all just kind of sits together like that in the box. Now, this thing does have cooling fans in it, so they are pulling air through it, and this is the one major reason why we're making this video today, is because these cooling fans are pulling all that metal dust down inside the electronics. And they're, you know, this is just basically open. Now the cool thing about this is that they do include a huge aluminum heatsink on the back of this, and I think some people are going to wonder about this process that I'm doing right now, and it's going to be a little bit controversial because I am not going to put any venting in the box at all when we mount this inside the box. I'm just going to run it sealed. And I've done this in the past and it seems to work. I have a guy running one right now in an aluminum shop. It's totally encased, totally sealed. No air from the outside can get in or out, and it runs just fine. So hopefully that'll be the case with this. I will update you if it does fail. But the one that we put in service that's totally enclosed has been there for almost 6 months, and it's still running really great. So I did buy this on Amazon. I'll put links down in the description. I etched some really cool sayings on the sides of it. One of my favorite quotes from Henry Ford: "Chop your own wood and it will warm you twice." I love that saying, so just, you know, kind of made this personalized for myself here. I think this was, at the time of making this video, just under 40 bucks. These are totally sealed on the inside, so, you know, it's just kind of a perfect scenario for this. And we're going to modify this actually to allow the wiring and everything. It's going to be quite simple. In fact, it's going to be really similar to how we did the K-back unit. We're going to use glands, and we're going to use the proper wiring and the proper crimp-on connectors, which I think is really important to this process, because in my previous video, you know, I was using kind of these cheese ball ones that were, they just weren't proper. You know, I ground off the coating, they weren't heat shrunk, you know, all that. So we're going to use these nice, you know, heat shrink ones or whatever, and fit it all up properly and make it a good installation. So yeah, let's, first step I think though is that we're going to take the VFD apart. That's what I think is going to be the first step. I haven't blown this clean in a while, so let's go ahead and take the screws out of it and see what we're dealing with on the inside. Okay, so if you don't know what these are capacitors, and they do store power, so just be aware that if you're playing around with electronics, there is a chance that you can get shocked. So, you know, might want to stay away from those two guys, at least the contacts on the other side anyway. You can see there is a fair amount of dust all over this thing. I'm going to blow it clean before we put it away into the new enclosure. But yeah, it's definitely dusty, and I feel like I am in the right when I'm doing this work because, yeah, I don't know how long this thing would actually last. So let's go ahead and blow it clean, and then we'll talk about the enclosure and how we're going to mount it inside. So the wiring for this is pretty straightforward, okay? So you have only one choice as far as electricity goes with this, and it's 220. This is a 220 whip that I made up when I wired up the K-back unit, so I'm not really going to go into how this is made. It's essentially 3 wires and a plug. I'm going to include links to all this stuff, all my supplies, even down to the little shrink wrap things. Every single thing that I use, all tooling, down in the description so you can find that. I get that question a lot about, you know, hey, where'd you get that and how does that work? So that's why I do that. I put that all down in the description for your convenience. So yeah, we got to wire it to 220. That's not a big deal, but that's why we've got this guy. But we really need to talk about how we're going to mount it into our enclosure, okay? This is, let me just go ahead and pop this lid off of here. No need to have the lid bouncing around for a little bit. This is a standard ammo box, okay, and you can buy these on Amazon, and they're easy to obtain, all steel, and by the time you put the lid down and clamp it shut, it's completely dust proof. Now we need to drill a couple of holes for the wiring glands, and that's these right here, these wiring glands. And the easiest way to do that is with a carbide tip hole saw, okay? Again, get these on Amazon, and this is a 7/8 of an inch, just under 1 inch hole saw. And we're gonna drill a couple of holes in the back of it so we can run the wiring down and in. Now, when it comes to actually mounting this guy on the inside, I'm gonna do that with one of my favorite things in the whole wide world, and that's hot glue. All right, so I catch a lot of flack for hot glue. I think it's a really great tool because it's not permanent, okay? You can glue this thing in there if you want with Gorilla Glue or whatever else you want, but I'll tell you what, when this thing fails and you got to pry that thing out of there, you're not going to be real happy. Really what we're trying to achieve here is to just keep this thing stationary on the inside of the can. We don't need it bouncing around in there and shorting out. So the hot glue actually is going to do that for us. Now, before we do anything at all, we're going to drill a couple of holes, probably 2 or 4 holes in the bottom of this can, so that we can bolt it down to my work surface. All right, so I don't like my controller boxes moving around. I like them to be stationary and not moving, so drill some holes so I can mount it to my workbench. Something to think about, because the way this is going to sit there and that these are the terminals, You know, you got about 2 inches of height there. You kind of want your wiring to kind of come in, you know, parallel with that. So, you know, just something to think about. If I set this down like this, I want my holes to come in somewhere around here and here. Let's test out this carbide bit. Oh yeah. Oh, that slug is hot. Look out. Nice. One more here. Right there. Hey, not too bad, huh? Those are hot. Be careful. Goodbye. Get out of here. And I'd just like to throw my hole saws back in the box with all the little instructions and the Allen wrench and all that, just for the next time I use it. I'll go in my hole saw drawer. All right, so we've got our 2 holes drilled in the side for our wiring. We've got our holes drilled in the bottom to mount it to our work surface. Let's take these glands and install them. Very simple. Thread them through, twist them into place. These create a dust-tight seal. I've heard they're waterproof. I don't know about that, but I know they do work really well for dust. So. You can buy these things from me too on my website as a kit. I have a K-back wiring kit. That wire and the glands, if you buy the 220 version, will actually work. You can go to my website, housemade.us, and check it out. All right, so we're getting kind of close to being able to mount this. I've got my hot glue gun all warming up here. In fact, it's drooling all over the place. So what I'm gonna do is just test fit this down in there. See where it wants to sit. A little ridge in there that's kind of supporting it in the middle. There's like that little ridge down in there. So you kind of have to get creative with how you're going to put this in. And because these are ridges down here on the bottom, there's not a lot of places to glue. So I'm thinking we just run a bead of hot glue along the side of this and set it all down in there and up against the wall. So let's just hot glue this. Like so. I love hot glue. Okay, so one of the things I just realized that while I was looking at that email from Don is that he actually put the whole machine, including the plastic case, inside of his box. My theory on doing it like this is that there's going to be a little bit more air circulation in here, and this should stay a little bit cooler. It's probably not as safe. You know, this is a metal box, so if something did come loose in there and, you know, you had an issue and something were to rattle loose and then, you know, I can't imagine it flipping over. But if you know, the worst case scenario is this thing flips over and arcs out and, you know, blows itself up. It's really in there with the hot glue though, so it is not coming out. But that's the reason why I'm doing it this way, because a little bit more airflow around the actual electronics I think is not a bad thing. So, all right, so let's just take a quick gander at the lid here. I love the way that Don did it in his photos. He actually mounted the control box right on the top here, cut this handle off completely and just put it smack dab in the middle. That's what we're going to do. We're actually going to use a cutoff wheel to make that happen, and then we'll draw a template and, you know, drop this down in as well. And I think I'm going to secure this with hot glue too. All right. Took a little doing, a little filing, and obviously cutting. There's 2 layers on this lid, so have to be aware of that when you go to do this. But yeah, it looks like it fits in there pretty good. I'm digging this so far. Very military, feels nice, solid. I think feels good about it. Like the look. I think it's pretty cool. See that there? Yeah. So, all right, we got to route the wiring in. We're going to go over to the grind table because I'm just going to use that existing wiring that I have over there. We're going to clean that up. We're going to shove these wires through these glands, tighten them down, and then give this thing a test run. Okay, so one of the things I definitely want to fix is this. These are the whip ends that I made 2 years ago. The wiring is good, but I'm not stoked on these, so I'm going to fix all that right now. We're going to use shrink connectors and all of that. I'm not going to give you a tutorial on that. You guys can figure this stuff out, but all the tools that I'm using, and I love these tools. I got some pretty cool like crimpers and other stuff. Down in the description, you're going to find links to all that. That's a game changer. And the right size shrink tubing. This is the right size. Just go down there and click through the link, and you can buy yourself a set. Or I sell the kits all ready to go on the website, housemade.us. Let's clean this up. We start with the 220 leg. This is the 220 from the wall. 2 hots and a ground. 220 is really easy to understand, so it's one of those things that I try to tell everybody, like, if you've never done it before, just watch a couple of YouTube videos and you'll be amazed at how quickly you can understand the process of wiring up a 220 outlet. But I'm not going to do that today, so all right, we're going to run this into the box. Just a little slack here. We got our gland to tie up. Alright. One thing I like about these glands, as soon as you tighten them up, everything kind of just gets snug. And we'll run our wires from our motor in. Alright, now we're just going to screw them all down inside. We're going to use our wiring diagram. I'm going to put a link down in the description to the wiring diagram that you can use for your own VFD if you need it. It does come as part of the plan set if you build the Revolution, but it's a free resource that was made by Dan over at DC Knives. Super easy to understand and wire up. All right, so it's always a project, but one of the things that I think I would not do in the future is use those ring terminals for the grounds. I would just use the same exact blue terminals that I used across the board down here because these don't really fit and you have to kind of trim them down. So yeah, if you decide you want to buy a wiring kit, I'll make like a specification for the overseas VFD and not include those and just replace them with the blue connectors. Otherwise, we are in. All right, let's get this thing hooked up the rest of the way. We got to put the control panel on it and give it a test run. Oh, yeah. Control panel is working. Turn it all the way down. I'm going to hit run. All right, our grinder is spinning. Yes. So just one more thing we got to do is screw this thing down to the work surface and just kind of get it situated on my workbench there. I got to say, this is really cool. I mean, it looks really cool and hopefully it'll last for a real long time. I have had a bunch of people reach out to me and say they've done similar things to their VFDs, their overseas VFDs that were not totally enclosed. And a couple people said they've had them running for 10 plus years this way and without ventilation and hardly any space around the actual unit, just shoved in like whatever box they could find, tackle boxes and whatever else. So we know the theory is that we know it works, but you know, hey, I can't 100% guarantee that this is like the solution. But I will say, for it being a quarter of the price of the K-back unit, and if you do have 220 in your workshop, this is an awesome alternative to having to run that really expensive K-back unit. And the one thing I didn't mention in the other video about the K-back unit, and somebody called me out on this and I totally spaced it, was that you do have to purchase the reverse switch for the K-back unit. And with these overseas VFDs, the reverse functionality is built in. So that's just one more reason why I think this is a really great alternative. Listen guys, if you got something out of today's video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. There's many ways to support my channel. There's Patreon, there's Buy Me a Coffee, but by far the best way to support me is to go to my website, housemade.us, and take a look at the Revolution 2x72 belt grinder project. You can buy pieces, parts, and plans for that right there, and that is the best way to support my work. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and obviously here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up. It really does help. I truly appreciate it. Guys, I hope to see you on the next video. My name is Brian House, and this has been House Made.